Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to virtually join us today to meet Austin's chamber leadership as they explore ways to collaborate and strengthen our local business ecosystem. Running a business or organization is challenging in any environment, especially today, and the chambers are built to increase the chances that yours will be a success now and in the future. First of all, I want to say, obviously, we miss seeing you in person. We've loved doing this event the last couple years outside in meeting facilities, and we're happy that you decided to join us virtually today. I'm Jeremiah Bentley. I'm the vice chair of Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce's Austin Gives program, and also I'm the vice president of marketing and community affairs with Texas Mutual Insurance Company. I'm happy to lead this discussion today, and also with our fellow sponsor, the Austin Board of Realtors. So thanks again for joining us, and thanks for participating. These leadership events are designed to provide you with inside information on key issues. In past years, it's been an opportunity to gather and network with your peers and leaders from around the region's community also. Today's event is unique because we were able to invite more community leaders to this virtual event to meet all of our Austin Chamber leadership from across the board. And we're really excited about that opportunity. And we're excited about the participation because you didn't have to drive downtown. You didn't have to spend an evening at a reception away from your family or whatever, but you're able to join us virtually from wherever you happen to work. The Austin business community finds strength in our diversity, and our chambers of commerce represent all of us. Notably, if you didn't catch this, and I did not originally because, I'm just not all that bright sometimes, but all of Austin chambers of commerce are now run by women. And so I'm very happy to be surrounded by this group and have them with us today. So with that, let's go ahead and kick it off here. With our featured speaker. So if we could have the panel all turn themselves on. And we're going to have a little conversation here about our common goals and objectives and how we can all work together. So we will do it in this order. I'm going to ask 3 different questions, but we'll start with Tina, then go to Alicia, and then Tam. And then after that, we will talk to, let me look at my script right here. Then, the other 3, whenever we get to it. How about that? Yeah. Deanna, Fong, and Laura. All right. That's perfect. So let's start with question 1 for everybody, starting with Tina. During this time of crisis, what is your chamber doing to help business? And you got to turn yourself on, Tina.
Don't say those dreaded words. You're on mute. Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Cannon, President and CEO of the Austin LGBT Chamber. Thank you so much to our chamber, sister chamber, the Greater Chamber, for putting this event together, and to your events team, who always does an incredible job of gathering large numbers, and we really do miss being with you in person. So the 3 priorities was the question.
Well, what are you, Tina? Come on.
I'm sorry. I know I started drinking early. I'm sorry. Go give me again.
During this time of crisis, what is your chamber doing specifically to help your businesses and your community?
Yeah, it's been like for all of us, I'm sure the answer will be very similar. It's about outreach to all of our members, connecting them to the resources that are available. And then really even kind of before that is advocating for those resources to be available for all the members and the business community. I mean, you drive around town and you can see the impact. And I think that's the role the chamber has really been in history as a connector, and even more so now is that more evidence. And it has been a one at a time for us, touch to each one of our members multiple times to see where they are, whether they understand where their confusion is, what do they need to know, here's the form, here's the link. Really just kind of being a mentor and a facilitator of information connection and resource connections during this time of COVID.
That's great. And I do want to say, I mean, y'all are obviously a very congenial group. I've really appreciated getting to know every one of you as we prepared for this. So if anybody wants to jump in or, and provide any follow-up or feedback, like we don't have to be too scripted or too formal today in case, the folks on the call didn't quite get that impression yet. But so next in order, I'll ask Alicia, what are y'all doing at the Young Chamber to help your community?
Yeah, thanks, Jeremiah. And of course, thanks to Texas Mutual and ABOR for sponsoring today's event, and to the Austin Chamber for putting this on. It's always great to be on a call with our partner chambers of commerce. And I totally echo what Tina said. We are, of course, as chambers, a clearinghouse of information for funding and resources that are available to businesses and employees. And I think that there was so much information coming out at the beginning of the pandemic, and we all were struggling to keep up, but making sure that we got that information out there. And of course, as that information continues to trickle out, we're continuing to keep people updated on what opportunities are available to them. In addition, at the Young Chamber, we're also continuing to offer virtual programs, and I know that's true of our partner chambers too. We definitely want to make sure that both businesses and employees have access to the information they need from a professional development standpoint and a learning standpoint as well, from information on how to stay healthy, to virtual networking and interviewing strategies in a virtual world now, to ways that we can be strong and flexible leaders during this time. So since the pandemic began, we've offered about 30 programs since March. And so we're really proud that a lot of those programs were free opportunities for people to engage, continue to have some face time with others, and learn different strategies that people are using to grow during this time.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Alicia. Okay. Next up, we have Tam Hawkins.
So I don't think that I have much different to add, right? My chamber partner members are just phenomenal in the work that they do. And we're so happy that the Austin Chamber and our sponsors were able to put this program on. But we've just really seen where the connection with your chamber is now more vital than ever. I think my partners would agree with that. And so being able to provide resources and help our businesses kind of pivot, because a lot of them have their business models kind of turned upside down. So they ended up having to figure out things in a different way and adapt to some technology and do that quickly. And so I think we all were interviewed by a reporter this past month or so. My time just gets foggy, but I think small business in Austin, one of their superpowers has been resilience. And they've just been able to overcome just incredible odds, and being privileged and in a position to try to help assist them during such vast change has been humbling, to say the least. So.
Yeah, that's been, so as someone who's a member of all 6 chambers and get all y'all's emails, which I love, and they're very helpful, you know, y'all have definitely really been on top of that and a real resource for all the communities that you support. The next person I want to ask this question to, so she's a super new chamber CEO, but not the newest one on this call. And that's Deanna Maldonado from the Greater Austin Hispanic Chamber, a board that I'm also on. So I've appreciated getting the chance to know you and work with you. What do you think are the unique aspects of what GAHCC is doing?
Well, thank you again for our sponsors and to the Austin Chamber for bringing this collective group together, and to be able to have fellowship among us and to our Austin community. I came on board in August, so it was obviously fast and furious. However, I've been a supporter of the chamber for 20 plus years. So it was like I was in the family, but now I really am, you know, part of the family. And one of the things that's important to the Latino community is the connectivity. Especially with COVID, that COVID has disproportionately impacted Latinos in the percentages more higher, the hospitalization rates and the deaths, unfortunately, to the Latino communities. So one of the things that the board and the chamber has done is to continue as much as possible to bring the programming in, and obviously pivoting to do it digitally, to stay connected. We've just finished doing a fantastic Celebrando 2020 that was brought to our supporters virtually, and it was just a success beyond my wildest dreams in such a short time frame. But I think more importantly is that there was a connection culturally, there was a connection through Central Texas, that people want to have that consistency, and we've really worked hard to bring that to our membership, our supporters, through programs like Capital of Texas Awards for identifying Latinas, the HAL program, the Hispanic Austin Leadership Program, that's another segment of population, and of course, overall Celebrando.
Thank you, Deanna. Next is our brand newest chamber executive, and that's Fong Fong from the Asian Chamber. Can you talk a little bit about your chamber and what you're doing?
Yes, thanks, Jeremiah, and good to see the fellow superwoman here, and I'm so glad to join you guys, and thanks Asian Chamber for this opportunity for us to get together and then talk about our vision. So during this time of crisis, Asian Chamber, of course, we are very grateful for the relief programs and grants that other chambers mentioned from the local, federal government, as well as the contractor opportunities provided by companies like Tesla, Austin Advocacy. So we regularly share these resources with our members, and we also provide cultural and language support to help them to seize these opportunities. And during this process, we also receive feedbacks on the obstacles that our community is facing. And we are constantly voicing these concerns on behalf of our community. For example, one of our members, the Asian Cafe, maybe some of you have visited before, they got rejected for a city grant, and then they didn't know why, and then they feel like his business is too small to be considered a small business in order to receive such help, right? So we also often hear that Asians are doing fine, they don't need help, but reality is a majority of our Asian businesses are mom and pop shops like this. There is this recent impact report from McKinsey on the Asian Americans' recovery. So 70% of the Asian businesses could not get a PPP loan because of the lack of the existing relationship with banks. So on top of all these difficulties, our community also had to go through and is still going through the anti-Asian racism during the pandemic. So Asian Chamber hosted this seminars to teach Asian businesses and our community on how to handle racism-related incidents, how to report and why to report, because Asians tend to minimize the impact due to language, due to cultural barrier. So I'm very amazed and touched by how resilient our Asian communities is. One of the questions in our latest member survey was, if the government provides no more COVID relief, what will happen to your business by the end of 2020? Guess what's the most common answer? It's others, and someone specifies, we will continue to work hard. So that's really touching for me. Not only that we're trying to be self-sufficient, we also try to help our Asian community at large and Austin community at large during the pandemic. The Chamber reached out to our restaurant members through Asian Eats Give campaign, where Asian community raise funds to purchase meals from these participating restaurants, and the restaurants will deliver the meals to all the frontline workers and disadvantaged groups that they choose, such as seniors, firefighters, doctors, and nurses, right? So that's a very long answer to the question that what Asian Chamber is doing to help business during this time of crisis. So without listing more examples, I'll end with this: we will continue to work harder.
That's a great answer. Yeah, and it's a good answer too. So I think it's okay that it's a long answer. And now I'm going to go on this opening question to Laura Huffman, who's been on the job since way back in March. So she's quite the veteran of the chamber business. What have you been up to, Laura?
Thanks, Jeremiah. And I love that we are all getting together to have this conversation. I think this is a historic moment in Austin's history to have women leading all of the chambers. And one of the highlights for me of the year has been getting to know all of y'all. So here's what the chamber's been up to. I'd say a lot of what everybody is saying, the two themes for us are keeping people connected and creating visibility and making sure the business community voice is heard. So on the connected front, tons and tons of online offerings, everything from in the beginning, how can you get PPE equipment, where are testing sites, there was a lot of confusion just 6 months ago about what it would take to be open safely, to keep your workforce safe and your customers safe. We also led a task force on reopening business in Central Texas, and every single one of the chambers participated in that so that we could provide advice to our local leaders and our state leaders on what it would take. And I think one of the big things that we all did together was we created a situation where the business community was actually leading on best practices. We all had campaigns on wearing masks and socially distancing. in order to keep our businesses safe and in order to make the businesses that we love to go to safe. And I think that was an important way for the business community to show we are the community. There's not something called the community and something else called the business community. We are the people of this community. We have our kids in schools, we go to grocery stores, and we lead businesses. And the second thing is visibility. And I think making sure that we do understand that the business community is the people of this community. I think that's a really important theme for all of this. And even though the pandemic has given us some very specific issues to deal with, we've had a lot of other big issues facing this community. And I think making sure that we are a voice in conversations ranging from homelessness to public safety to diversity, equity, and inclusion is incredibly important. And we represent an incredible cross-section of this community when we raise our voice in those issues.
Yeah, thank you very much, Laura. I want, one thing is just a note for the audience. If you will type, if you have questions, if you can type them in the Q&A box, we will get to those. As many of them as we can after the scripted portion here. And the second thing is, like, I don't really feel like we need to go with all these questions like in the exact order. So I'm going to ask question 2, and whoever wants to answer can answer and just jump in. And I am keeping track on a notepad over here to make sure that you all get to and have to take your turn to talk. But since you're CEOs of chambers, I feel like talking's probably what you do. So if each of you, and start wherever, could talk about what are 3 priorities your chamber's working on right now. The floor is open.
I'll go ahead and start it off. One of the things with the Greater Austin Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is, different studies that I looked into prior to coming on board with the chamber is that in Central Texas, Latino small business owners consist of approximately 12 billion in economic activity. And then there's, over 51,000 small businesses, and obviously with the demographics that those numbers will be changing. So one of the things that we're doing collectively is looking at how small businesses can continue to thrive, because with Austin, everybody loves Austin, everybody's coming to Austin, there's a lot of growth, that we don't want that growth to overshadow the ability for small businesses to thrive, because they truly are the footprint of our communities that have been here for generations. And there's a legacy of community that we want for them to stay thriving and still be successful, and for us to find ways for them to evolve into that new modern way, or to have that cultural aspect that people will be gravitated towards. And so it's looking at how to conduct business and making that fit. And we're doing procurement opportunities. We're obviously doing the digital offerings as well. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at keeping at those numbers, but also looking at how we can be creative and vision, the 3-5 year and beyond plan towards that, because it's about being relatable, it's about being relevant, and being small business centric, and that we are that eco hub in Central Texas for our members and our partners.
Yeah, I'll follow up on that. Deanna, I think you raised some important issues there. I mean, I would say our number 1 priority at the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce right now is reinvigorating the Austin economy. And that does not have to involve forced trade-offs. That can mean that you get a great big Tesla making a decision to come to Austin. And it can also mean that we care and help our smallest, most iconic businesses in Austin. And one of the reasons I think this is such a good group of people to be working together is we can prevent people from positioning that as though it is one or the other.
Or the other.
That is the business ecosystem in Austin. And when we raise one boat, we raise all boats. And so when we think about economic recovery, we absolutely supported the small business program at the City of Austin. And we supported Tesla coming to Austin with partnerships with the county and the school district. And I think that we can be that voice that shows we can have it all in Austin. And then the other priority for us is really on the policy front. There's so much happening at the city, county, and state level. Deanna knows that space well. And we need to make sure that the voice of business is heard. It's a dynamic voice. It's not a monolithic voice. But we want to make sure that policymakers understand we do have a point of view, and we should be in the room when important conversations are happening around public safety, around homelessness, around legislative agendas. Those are things that this business community those are problems we can help solve. And we add a lot of value when we bring our members to the table because they've struggled with complex issues themselves.
I think that some of the issues that are facing our membership in particular are not unlike others, right? They're small businesses at the end of the day, but our areas of focus right now are definitely eradicating and trying to diminish the purported failure rate of Black business in Central Texas due to COVID-19. So a lot of our efforts are focused on making certain that we keep those people afloat and make certain that we don't live in a city that has those businesses missing. And again, and I think that's something that most everyone on this panel can relate to. Then we also are focusing on advocacy, most definitely, in terms of racial and social justice as it relates to businesses as well, right? And so we've seen a lot this summer in the news with protests, but we tend to disconnect that from Black business in a way, I think, that relates to what's going on the street, quite frankly. So you'll see, and go ahead, someone was saying something, I'm sorry.
Sorry, maybe I was
that you'll, and similar to Laura, that there's so many policy changes and decisions that are being made. And so we kind of have that same sense of, it's not big business versus small business. It's really that we work together, and a city works well when that ecosystem is fluid with both. But we also think that some certain kind of conversations with policy and safety issues, public safety, are disconnected from good, just sound economic practice, right? And development, that you can have social and racial justice and policy, and you can also have great economic development policy as well. They're not exclusive of each other. I mean, they work well best together. So, and you'll see us focus on looking at, and part of circling back, Fung, now I'm taking a long time. And you'll see us coming back to looking at eradicating those numbers by focusing on certain markets and looking at CPG and the huge disparity with the spend power for Black businesses in CPG and the amount of production and output. So you'll see us really focus this year on that.
All right. This is a really good conversation, but we also have a special guest. So I want to give him his due. In the center square on my Zoom screen, I don't know if it's on everybody's, is Mayor Steve Adler, who's gracefully agreed to join us today and say a few words and participate in the conversation. So Mayor, thank you very much for making time for this great group of Chamber members and leadership, and the floor is yours.
Well, first, I want to apologize for my tardiness in joining you all. There are one or two things that are going on in the city right now that are not leaving me in real control of my schedule. But I'm excited to be here with you. I am real excited at the leadership of the chambers and where we're positioned right now. And I think that just bodes so well for our city. We go through this pandemic. And there's a real opportunity, I think, when so many things are disrupted, when so many people's plans and ideas of what would be happening next are disruptive, to really get kind of like a restart or a whiteboard to try and figure out both what we need to do and how we need to do it. It is clear that as you go through the tumultuous times that we've gone through, that we're only going to be able to make this as a city if we have all the voices present and involved in the decisions that are being made. frankly, I don't know that we have done that as well as we need to. And I think that the conversation that we just had, for example, with Project Connect, and the ability to work with the chamber and making sure that we had a proposal that not only worked for the traditional stakeholders, but for the business communities associated with that, is a really good example of how we can, in fact, end up with much better products when we are working together. The work that was done in the city in that regard, I think, was really helpful. The work that we did with the COVID response in our city, and bringing together businesses and industries and asking for assistance, and how we structure that, I think, is one of the reasons why our city has done as well as our city has done in the COVID response, and it hasn't letting up. I sent an email to Laura this morning, asking her to get some of those task force going again, because we need the help with respect to what are we going to do with bars in the city. But that is the kind of question that we shouldn't be doing on our own. And we've had too much disjointed work, I think, with homelessness in the city that we're trying to now get back on and track, not only with respect to the 3 to 4 year plan that is now being formed and will actually get us to ending homelessness, but also dealing with the immediate issues of how to manage shared public spaces. And that's something that we need all of the chambers involved in. And I think that we just need to do a better job as we introduce these areas of getting everybody involved at the beginning in participating. And I will resolve to do that with the chambers. But we also need the chambers to come in constructively too, and recognize that politically, the city may be in a different place than where the chamber memberships are. And that doesn't mean that there's not real valuable work to be done, but just that everybody needs to recognize that these conversations are difficult. But if we're all joined together to actually improve the city, then we can. And I think we have this opportunity now with new leadership in the organizations, with new issues, with new opportunities, again, to rethink how we've done these things in the past. So my door absolutely open. Please let me use really the tools of the mayor's office, which are two: the ability to be able to convene, the ability to use the bully pulpit in ways that can both bring us together and more involved, but also advance these issues. These are hard issues. These are hard conversations. And we need a place and participants that are willing to actually engage in the conversation without sound bites. I can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to being past November 3rd, where we can pull back from electioneering and more to really problem solving in a community. I'm just excited. I'm excited about these folks, and I'm excited to work with the chambers. This is a huge opportunity and a crucial time for the city. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Adler. Does anybody want to follow up on that from among the panel? No?
As always, we appreciate that engagement, and you're right there. I think there's a bit of bridge building that needs to happen. The business community here is part of Austin, and I think that voice needs to be better reflected at City Hall on multiple fronts. And it's our role as leaders of these organizations to make sure that narrative and those conversations, those dialogues are brought to City Hall in a constructive manner, because ultimately, working together, we're all going to make Austin even more a city of us.
All right. Thank you, Tina. Thank you, Mayor, for being with us. I don't know if you've got time, if you want to stick around and listen to a little bit of the rest of the conversation, or if you're on to the next thing, but you're right. There is never a dull moment in Austin, Texas. And we appreciate your leadership on the issues that you thought you were going to deal with, and the issues that have come up, and sort of everything that we're facing right now in this interesting time.
Well, if I want to inhibit conversation, I'll probably hang around kind of as a fly on the wall, at least for as long as I can, so that I can hear what folks are saying.
Maybe a fly on some hair, maybe. Not so much of that.
Jeremiah, I just want to mention one thing and emphasize Tina's point and what the mayor is saying about having a broader conversation with the business community. I think that I think one key to that is bring us in early and help us see where we can participate in the conversation and even how these difficult conversations are framed. How you launch a conversation is pretty indicative of how it will land. And I think all too often we just assume there are big differences between a chamber point of view and a community's point of view. And I return to my earlier theme, the business community is the community. These are the places where people work, and these are the businesses that people lead. And I think that if we can initiate some of these conversations early, then we'll get better framing, and I think we'll figure out where the areas of agreement are. There are always areas of agreement, and then we can sort those places where we disagree. But I appreciate that offer, and we do stand ready to join in those conversations early and often.
Cool. Let's make it.
And I'd like to echo, you know, the sentiments and the conversation with regards to there's no coincidence that it's all female CEOs running the chambers, because I think that there is a gift of collaboration that we can bring and work with you, Mayor Adler, on having a better or a stronger pulse with regards to the pandemic and how each of us can bring those voices from our respective chambers. And at the same time also interweaving, because we all support each other and our businesses also intersect each other's, you know, business, priorities. And so I think there's no coincidence, I feel, that this has happened. And it is about having those difficult conversations. I mean, one of the things that I did last year is just to immerse myself, to read and know and ask why. You know, one of the books I read was The Injustice Never Leaves You, with regards to the Texas Rangers and how it impacted the generational wealth of land for Mexicans. I'm also reading The Color of Law. And I think that it's knowing your history and knowing how we got to where we are today, but also being constructive of where we go beyond of what brought us here. So I appreciate the opportunity. I look forward for Central Texas being stronger and having that equity and having that voice and presence that our membership and our partners have charged us to do.
I totally agree with that, and especially the historic aspect of that. When I'm talking to our corporate partners, I feel like the top 3 priorities of everyone almost includes diversity and inclusion this year. So that's very encouraging to see. I don't know if you guys are aware or remember this story about Vincent Chang. He was a Chinese American who was murdered in Detroit in 1982 by 2 laid off auto workers because they mistakenly thought he was Japanese. And at the time, Japanese was blamed often, a common blame for the job loss, especially in the auto industry. So the Reverend Jesse Jackson took time off from his presidential campaign to show his support. And he said, moment like this brings family together. And I really feel like right now we are at another moment that brings all the family again. So Asian Chamber will stand with our sister chambers and with Mayor, and then find some actionable solutions that businesses can contribute to this diversity and inclusion.
Thank you, Fung. That's really good points there. So Alicia, we haven't heard from you in a little while. Can you talk a little bit about y'all's priorities going forward?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. I echo Fung in her sentiments about DEI being a priority for all of our chambers, absolutely. So, you know, for the Austin Young Chamber, We're looking at opportunities around entrepreneurship and what that looks like now for our early stage startups. The Young Chamber, we see a lot of those entrepreneurs want to get started and they were derailed by what happened back in March. And so it's how do we get them back on track, and what are ways that we can support them in those endeavors to continue to grow our small businesses here locally. And then of course, when we look at that, we also want to develop partnerships and strategies for building a diverse pipeline of those businesses. And that goes right back to DEI and working with our partner chambers. It becomes even more important. And as they mentioned, since the pandemic began, we've had to work more closely together. And I think we've done that beautifully. I think a great example of that was the opening Central Texas for Business Task Force, which included not only us, but so many business leaders of all different sizes and so many cross sectors. And I know that Mayor Steve Adler and the judge, the county judge, also supported that effort, and it was beautifully put together by the Austin Chamber. And so it sounds like we may be getting back to work. There's obviously more work to do. It's never ending, but that was just a great example of how we do come together and we do work on these priorities. And I think that the same can be achieved with diversity, equity, and inclusion opportunities there.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Tina, you haven't had a chance to weigh on your priorities. And I think after this, if it's okay, we've got a ton of really good questions from the Q&A, and we'll open it up to some of those. But Tina, what have we not talked about that y'all are prioritizing?
Well, I mean, everybody's touched on the economic prosperity and recovery is really central to all the work that we're all doing. Part of that specifically for our chamber is in and around supplier diversity. And so that work is for hub businesses. So there is a certification that if you are an LGBT owned company, much like if you're a women owned company or a minority owned company, you can go through a qualification process and become certified as a hub. And so we're working with our corporate partners here in Austin for them to either advance their supplier diversity programs or to create one around LGBT BEs, business enterprise. And then also working with the city through their disparity study and their purchasing department to make sure that LGBT BE is also included in supplier diversity and procurement for city and county. And then going into not this session, but the next session, we'll probably take a shot at making that change at the state level as well. So that brings me to the third thing that we work on is advocacy, as all of our chambers do, and a lot of it we do together, whether it be local issues around propositions. We all stay out of the way of candidates, but when it comes to propositions and issues, we definitely get engaged and involved. So for us, supporting Prop A and Prop B was important from our members, and our board supported that, both those provisions. We're working to get prepped for the state level, the next legislative session. We know that there are already some additional discriminatory bills coming to impact the LGBT community and workforce. And then, of course, we'll do the regular chamber-y type things during the legislative session when it comes to business regulatory environment. So it's the economic prosperity and recovery, supplier diversity, and then advocacy are kind of our big giant chunks that we're working on.
All right, thank you. Fong, do you want to, you talked about diversity and inclusion, but I did not give you a chance to talk about your priorities. So would you like to jump in on that?
Yeah, thank you, Jeremiah. On top of those common priorities that are shared by all the chambers, for Asian Chamber specifically, what we're working on is, with the new CEO, and we also have our new chair this year. So we really did some soul searching, and we decided to mainly focus on two things. One is the getting to know ourselves, meaning the Austin Asian community better. And then two, introduce us to our Austin community at large. So those are the two priorities. Specifically, because according to the early census data, Austin Asian population has just surpassed the African American population, and it became the second largest minority in our region, which was not surprising to us because Asian population has been the fastest growing population in our region for the past 2 decades. When we talk about, when you guys think about Asian, the images associated with this word Asian are often monolithic. I hope you're not almost right now thinking of a Mulan. In fact, we are the most diverse minority. And in Austin alone, we have 20 Asian ethnicities, languages, and cultural. So we also hear from our corporate partners saying, hey, we have a good understanding of who the Hispanic communities are, who the African American communities are, but we have very little understanding who the Asian communities here in Austin are. So to address that, we're planning on to 2 initiatives in the near future. So one is the annual landscape report on the Austin Asian community, who we are, the demographics, and the business community, business owners, who are they, what's our purchasing power, what's our barriers, what's our advantages and disadvantages, right? So that's gonna be the annual report to help us to know ourselves better, and then also give a window to non-Asians to get to know us. The other is more soft approach of the storytelling campaign. We're calling it temporarily Asians of Austin. If you know what New York, Humans of New York is, it's a very similar campaign. It's a portrait of an individual or business or a non-Asian with any kind of Asian, Thai Asian stories. And so a quote from that person, right? So it's very relatable, personal story to tell the story that really stick. So when you're thinking back, hopefully for Asians in Austin, all these faces, all these stories stands out instead of a monolithic face that behind it. On the other hand, we wanted to introduce us to the Austin community at large to be more engaged, more integrated. I have to say, especially when Mayor is here, I moved from DC and then to New York and to Austin. Our Asian communities are very, very well integrated in Austin compared to the other 2 cities. I think we have that unique advantage that our size of the city is not so massive, so we can still work as Asian, as united, as an Austin community. So that's the advantage where we have a solid foundation we already are building on. So next step, we wanted to really introduce us over there and say, hey, we are part of it. We want to contribute. Let us know how to engage. We all know that the way to a person's heart is through stomach. I hope it's true. Inspired by that, we're thinking of planning on a Asian restaurant week to get to your heart. So maybe think about Chinese Monday, Indian Tuesday, Vietnamese Thursday, that kind of thing. And then because our restaurants also coming out from COVID-19, if they survive, they really need that kind of a support, the publicity, which is the single largest obstacle for them. And in the meanwhile, my non-Asian friends always ask me, where should I go to eat the authentic Chinese food, the authentic Indian food? So we see the demands on the both sides, and we want to be that bridge for the restaurant and for everything related Asian, right? So that's our focus. And then as you can tell, we're very excited for this initiative, for the opportunity it brings for our chamber, our members, and our Austin community.
Yeah, thank you for all that. It sounds like you will be plenty busy in coming time. So I'm gonna, we've got a lot of questions, and we're only gonna have time to get to a few, and I think we can probably pick the people who are the most passionate about it to answer them. Tina, you mentioned propositions, and the mayor also talked about Prop A. So does anybody want to weigh in on their chamber's position on Prop A and Prop B, and why?
So we did support Prop A and Prop B. We think it's vital to the community to provide jobs. And transportation, it makes no sense to me that a barista who wants to work in my neighborhood has to live 40 miles away in Buda to drive in because he can't afford an apartment here. It's time that we connect our region. There is no good time, there is no bad time. We have to do it. This is the time that we have to move Austin forward. There are plenty of arguments in opposition. There are plenty of arguments in support. But we have to do what's right for the future of Austin. So our board unanimously supported both Props A and Props B.
The Greater Chamber supports Prop A. We didn't weigh in on Prop B. We've got an infrastructure subcommittee, which is led by Sean Cranston, who spent a couple of years of really hard work evaluating the needs of the community, the proposals that were around. And so, as Tina said, this is not an easy decision. And there are plenty of arguments on all sides of the issue. And in the final analysis, the Chamber voted to support Prop A.
The Austin Young Chamber has also voted to support Prop A. We have not weighed in on Prop B yet. And for us, it was the opportunity for new jobs for workers here. And of course, emphasis on quality of life and economic diversity and equity that this plan incorporates. We also think that this positions Austin with the needed infrastructure to be a global destination city. And I think there's a lot of opportunity and room for growth there that we bring to Austin when we make this plan. It's definitely not an easy decision, as Laura and Tina mentioned, but it's something that our region has needed for a while, and this is the way to get it started.
And Jeremiah, we also, the board supported Prop A. That's the only one we discussed. One of the things that also we're looking at as the city is growing east side to the east center, east of the center, we are looking at the displacement of Latino communities. And one of the things that we like about Prop A is that it has an investment of $300 million for anti-displacement, opportunities, because time and time again, as we grow, Black and Latino communities are the ones that get impacted the most. So we are looking very carefully at that. We, as the mayor said, we are looking to have a position of voice and presence at the table, should Prop A pass, and, along with any other growth issues. But clearly, Austin is competing globally, and having been in politics prior to this, the conversation of expansion in our mass transit is long overdue. And so we decided to support it.
I feel like we're all really sisters, right? We also supported Prop A as well for all of the aforementioned ideas that were mentioned, and just really for us, it was about connectivity and making certain that forgotten people and populations were able to connect in a way that we just haven't been. And obviously, we are all recruiting and hardworking and making certain that we bring business to Austin, and we support the businesses that are currently here. So that was all the other reasons why we supported Prop A.
And for Asian Chamber, we also unanimously support the Prop A. I guess one is for all the Asians, the infrastructure is essential. It just goes without saying. And then it all makes sense to us instantly. And then second of all, if you think about the ancient civilizations, the key cities, they are all located in all the deltas, right? Including all the key cities in US in the ancient way, in the railway where the transportation hub is. That's how, that's essential, and then how a city, a community, and economy could flourish. So that's essential foundation we have to invest in now.
Yeah, thank you all for that input. So I'm going to ask one more question before we run out of time, for two reasons. One, I think it's because y'all are uniquely positioned to answer this because of who you are in your roles. And two, because I love Kathy McHorse and everything that United Way does. So going to bump her up. So according to the New York Times, women accounted for the majority of jobs lost during the early days of the pandemic. And every month since June, there's been a pronounced slowing of job growth and labor participation for married women. How might the Austin Chambers be uniquely positioned to address this as a concern, with all the chambers having women in executive leadership roles and looking at our economic recovery efforts?
I'm going to take a really quick stab, and I promise you guys I won't be that long. I just have to give kudos to the Austin Chamber with the Reopening Central Texas Task Force, because it was eye-opening. I am, I think, one of the few on this call that are actively in the process of doing that. Like, you can hear my children in the background. You can see my head dipping back and forth trying to manage that. So I think we were quick to highlight the needs of childcare. And if we were serious about reopening the region, we had to figure out childcare. Like, that was huge and upfront. So I think we are positioned to continue to promote with some of our partners how to get access to childcare. We are also positioned, I think, and I'm inviting my colleagues on a call about balancing and how do we come up with creative and innovative ways to not have the children in the background on your Zoom call when you're on a panel? Like, how do you figure those things out? And then there are other things that we can do in terms of policy to encourage lawmakers to put dollars behind what we're all, quite frankly, facing. And it'd be a travesty, I gotta say this, for those women to drop out of the workforce because of the pandemic, and we could really solve some issues with policy.
It's certainly this, and with the pandemic, it highlights an issue that has been prevalent even before, where in my former role as a financial advisor for a large global investment firm, and again in politics, I mean, this really highlights an opportunity for us to look at an issue as a legislative agenda, statewide and federally, because this is a game changer for gender equity on the wage gap that we really need to address, that already existed, because women miss out on their highest income earning years during our 40s, and that window is smaller for women than it is for men. And because some of us drop out because either want to have start a family, or some other getting married or what have you, or we're taking care of our loved ones, sandwich generation, we get bombarded and impacted negatively. And now with the pandemic, it really has caused some stress and anxiety, and the income has been just sharply lowered to women. So I think for us, it's an eye opener to really address it as a legislative issue.
I'll just be real quick and add to that the famous Ann Richards saying, right? And this panel is proof in the pudding. If you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And it's about getting more women into leadership positions and having that voice.
I'll add that as a mother, you definitely feel that strain day to day. There's been meetings where my kids are screaming in the background. Thank God for mute, right? And so you have to kind of balance that. And I think that it's important to note that for women and for men, it is a new work-life balance for us. And I think that employers and companies, businesses are looking at ways that they can embrace that and work through that as we continue in this virtual setting. And I think that we as chambers can work with those businesses to see what those policies look like and provide an opportunity to convene different groups together for best practices as we move forward.
Well, and I'll reiterate, one of the things that we learned at the task force, and Kathy McHorse was a big part of this, was childcare. That is infrastructure for women. And for women that are trying to get back to work, childcare was the number one issue. But there were two other issues that I think are also important for women, and that is how school is being taught right now and how it will be taught in the future, and what that means for us within our homes and beyond our homes. And then the other thing is the opportunity to provide upskilling, to make sure that people who have permanently lost their jobs have access to places like ACC and Workforce Solutions and all of the programs that are available in our community to gain skills, not just to get another job, but to get on a different career trajectory. And I think the combination of those three things are critically important for women. And I think this is a group that is obviously going to lean into that set of issues, because we're part of that. We've been through many of these issues, or going through these issues, and see the need to make sure that we lift women up in this time.
So for women, for Asian Chamber, I was thinking, I was interviewing one of our board members, did you observe the productivity goes down or goes up when people started to remotely working? And he said, and also shared by others, business owners, certain department of the company, the productivity goes up, certain goes down. So I really wanted to, this is my journalistic instinct, I really wanted to get to know what is that elements that cause the discrepancy within the same company, right? So I doubt it's just a gender role, but that's something, like the Chinese proverb, every crisis that comes with an opportunity. This is opportunity for us to examine what can facilitate the employees' better, no matter what men or women, that increase the productivity. I think with that said, I think women should earn the opportunity, not because of a woman, but in spite of women, right? That's what I believe. So we'll create that most efficient, flexible culture for men and women to be able to find their own rhythm to perform the most productive way.
All right,
I'd like to just add quickly, Jeremiah, on that.
Yes, ma'am.
That we're also going to have to see some changes in campaign financing for women candidates to be able to donate certain parts of their fundraising to childcare. We're just going to have to figure that out too.
That's very, speaking of, that was very practical, Tam, and I think I heard somebody jumping in on that conversation just now. Yeah, I want to thank Alicia, Deanna, Fung, Laura, Tam, and Tina for your time this afternoon. Y'all are awesome. You're a fountain of information. I would stick around for hours and hours of this because I've really enjoyed the conversation, but everybody else probably has somewhere else to go and another meeting to do. So I thank y'all very much for your input. I want to thank the mayor very much for stopping by and sharing his words and listening to the conversation and opening up the office of the mayor for this ongoing conversation around all these issues that we face. We're very fortunate to have strong, thoughtful and talented women leading the Austin Chamber of Commerce in these unprecedented times, and we look to all work together to do that. Mayor, do you want to take a second to send us out before we close and promote the next event?
Well, I enjoyed the conversation too, and I know the people on the call, and they're all civic heroes of mine. I just thought, and I put into the chat, as I was watching the panelists, just to note that not only is everybody here woman, and the city council, that's a majority women on the city council, but the economic development department in the city is led by a woman, Veronica Brasinio, and Sovnovia Holt-Rab, and Susana Cabajal, also women as assistant directors, but not just that. Travis County Economic Development is led by Diana Ramirez, and not only that, but the state's Economic Development Office is led by Adriana Cruz. And I mentioned not only that, but Diane and my three daughters obviously run my home. So I honestly believe that makes a difference. And in this time, I think it's going to require different ways of approaching problems that we have, challenges that we have. I'm tired of knocking our heads around, and we need to advance them for the sake of the community. And I think with the leadership on this panel, we are primed to be able to do that in really unique ways that are going to make us successful. So thank you guys for your leadership.
Thank you very much, sir. So I want to put in a quick plug. We talked about all the challenges that we have. We've got a couple upcoming webinars and events. On October 20th, we will talk about Texas and Canada. And then on October 26th, it's one of the hot issues of the day, and that's mobility. So the Austin Chamber is hosting a virtual event that will outline improvements to I-35, an economic impact study on Project Connect, and a special update on Tesla. So please join us at 2 p.m. on October 26th for the Greater Austin Chamber of Commerce's Regional Mobility Summit. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I again want to thank our speakers for being engaging, and I hope everyone has a great and safe day. Thank you.
Thank you.